Hey, before we get out of here, I want to ask you something that popped off in the last week or so. And that was a comment from our mutual friend, the great Kevin Nash, about LA Knight. Now, we're going to talk about Eli Drake next week here on the program, but LA Knight is getting really, really over with this WWE crowd. Yeah. And Kevin Nash was asked about LA Knight. And he said, am I the only one who sees an absolute ripoff of The Rock? To the point where he cut the promo on fucking Logan Paul or whatever the fuck his name is. He said, yeah, stick it. The only thing he didn't do was turn the motherfucker sideways. Jesus Christ, does everybody have amnesia? There's nothing original. Oh man, his fucking promos. Finally, LA Knight has come back as a white guy. Fucking uncle. So I love Kevin Nash. I could listen to him read the phone book and it would be entertaining. But I did have a laugh to myself like you did, thinking, man, isn't everything in wrestling inspired by something else? Like musicians today were certainly inspired by musicians of the past. If you listen to hip hop, you'll hear a lot of samples and you'll certainly hear popular songs being redone, like the Whitney Houston song that crushed or the Chris Stapleton song that crushed. Somebody else wrote that. They just redid it and it hit. And I think that applies to wrestling too, where you borrow from this guy and that guy. And look at all the people that Ric Flair inspired or the superstar Billy Graham inspired, on and on. I'm just curious from your perspective. And for that matter, even Ric Flair, the nature boy, he wasn't the first one, like Buddy Rogers was. And anyway, I'm curious your take on what Kevin said and what you think of, just through history. A lot of wrestling and entertainment borrows from the past. No,
Jerry Lawler wasn't the original king. It was
right.
Bobby Shane is who he looked at as kind of where, and I don't think Bobby Shane was the original king. I mean, we could go on and on and on. Conrad, I recently read an article about these major corporations, what they started and what they are now.
Yes.
Nintendo. I mean, there's so many different things, they start as something and completely pivot. And that's kind of the recipe to the success, is adapting as you go. That, oh, well, that didn't work, so let's try that. While I'm talking about Eli Drake, when did he start, Conrad? Because I think that goes into, he's not a young guy. Because when he worked for us during this era, so that's,
he'll be 41 later this year.
Okay, so 6 years ago, yeah, he's 35, and I'm like,
started wrestling in 03, 20 years ago in Cincinnati.
Yeah. And they had told me, yeah, he actually was in the WWE developmental and it didn't work out. I'm like, well, that's interesting. I where did I miss, this guy? So he's been around, and by osmosis and trial and error, and sometimes the almighty word timing doesn't work out. Sometimes it works perfect. Sometimes it doesn't work perfect at all. But to your point, absolutely everything is inspired in a certain way. The folks that can take a little inspiration here and a little inspiration there and a little inspiration there and mash it up and make it authentic to themselves, well, then they're not just uber successful, but, innovators, if you will. But, getting into the philosophy, everything starts as a thought. And what are thoughts made of? In a lot of ways, divine inspiration, but an intuitive thought. It's all kind of what you've seen before, and how can I do something a little different? So, boy, Kevin, I read that and it took me back to being in a car.
Yes.
Saying that, riding down the car road and saying that. And I guarantee if he had a couple of tall ones in him, he would start doing impersonations, and then we'd be really laughing our ass off. But hats off to Eli, or hats off to LA. I mean, he's told in the system. When did he go there this time? 18, 19?
Yeah, I mean, after TNA, I mean, he was the TNA champ in 2018. So
it was 19. Yeah, I think. But anyway, so
no, 2021.
Okay,
I forgot he did that stint with Billy Corgan in the studio NWA show.
Okay,
so dude's only been there since February of 2021, and now here he is, just a little over 2 years later, hotter than ever.
So, but here was where I was going to wrap all this up is they've given him the platform. And when you give a guy who has, look, he's been 4 or 5 characters on national TV, whatever it may be, but a seasoned guy versus a guy who's got 3 or 4 or 5 years in the business, that's where you can immediately tell the difference of, well, it's like here in Nashville, the musicians that get on stage, the guys that can really, really do it. We talked about Buddy Landale, the talent that can really, really do it with off the cuff. That doesn't happen by overnight. It takes time to develop that talent. So he's been grinding for a lot of years. Congrats to a guy who has persistence, passion, and perseverance.